Hi everybody. So we're going to get started with our first video review of week 2. And so in this assignment, what we're doing is we're building our color knowledge. Last week, what we looked at a number of different things, but some of the terms that I hope you'll remember or start to remember are hue, value, and saturation, right? So hue is just simply the name of a color, green, red, purple, violet, blue, etc. And then we also had value, which is simply the lightness or darkness. The color doesn't matter. We can see lightness or darkness in any color. And then saturation, which means the sort of the amount of intensity or pigment or brightness of a color. So, tones, remember we looked at tones? Here's a tone right in here. Can you see that? It's very toned out. It means that gray has been added, black, white, mixture of black and white. And that's when we start to see the desaturated, when you would combine the gray into a color. It sort of looks like it's, muted or weathered or something like that. So the hue, value, and saturation were the three terms, and we're going to keep talking about them in this assignment a little bit when we talk about the scales that you've done. The thing that we're introducing this week is analogous color. Analogous color is um, let's just pull up a sample here so we can see it is 2 to 3, typically 3. um, this is a little bit clearer right here. 3 hues on a color wheel. Now color wheels are all a little bit different, but you could go from orange to orange yellow to yellow, and that would be an analogous harmony. And so analogous harmony is actually, you could say, is one more, like is one step beyond monochrome. Like monochrome would be yellow, just yellow. And remember we did the monochrome last week. And then analogous is, you could say, the most related to, or pardon me, analogous is the most related to the monochrome in the sense that it's just one step up where you start adding a few more hues, but they're related, like they're adjacent or sister colors, essentially. So they actually, analogous colors have, sort of similar properties. Um, let's just go maybe here. Sort of similar properties to the monochrome, which is that it's like kind of, it's a little soothing. It feels very natural. It doesn't have a lot of kind of like push and pull. It feels just very nice and sort of pleasant. Like if you decorated a room with analogous colors, it would have a very sort of natural, harmonious, organic kind of quality to it. Same with the monochrome. It can look very, and it's very cohesive. It's very easy to work with. Okay, so that's the analogous. Let's see, color wheels. I wanted to mention this just really briefly. You were learning about color wheels this week, and what color wheels relate to is the different medium that the color wheel is based on. So traditional medium, the traditional color wheel would be based on. Now I'm going to come back to this in a minute. So, but based on like physical colors, like paintings or interior design or other things. But it's sort of what we call the traditional color wheel, the additive and subtractive wheels. So the subtractive color wheel actually has a lot in common with the traditional color wheel. The only difference is the colors look just a little bit different, but if you look at them, you can sort of see there's kind of a sort of a similarity to them. Um, and subtractive are used exclusively for the printing process, for printing ink. So they're like the I always think of them as the graphic design color wheel because graphic designers have to know the subtractive wheel. Additive, who needs to know about the additive? Maybe theater designers, with when they work with color gels. There's probably a few more examples. But in general, to me, these models, they're interesting to know about, you know, but the most useful color wheel for all of us is the traditional color wheel because that's where we really derive our color harmonies from. Doesn't mean you have to use exactly these colors. You'll notice the traditional color wheel is a little more muted in places where the additive, like the violet here, is a lot brighter. So it doesn't really matter about the saturation or brightness, but in general, the traditional color wheel is what we refer to, everybody. Doesn't matter whether you're a digital designer, or, interior designer, or game designer, whatever you are. When you dial up a color harmony, like you want to understand what complement to use, the traditional is what we all understand what those color harmonies mean. So if somebody says, hey, what's the complement of red? You would always say green. It doesn't matter what what kind of design you're in. It's standard. So just keep that in mind. I know sometimes that our online lectures maybe sort of like don't make that as clear, but I really want to make sure you understand the traditionals, what we use to kind of develop harmonies. Um, okay, all right, so let's get started and taking a look at everybody's assignments. Okay, Isis, I'm confused because my colors are ranging from dark to light. That's great, yes. And we'll talk about why in just a few moments. Um, okay, let's take a look at yours. So the other thing, color wheels, analogous color. Uh, the other thing we're also learning about is just warm to cool colors, which is also, I would say, I mentioned at the very beginning in week 1 that what I would try to do in these group critiques is to tell you what I think are really useful information for you as a upcoming, design person. And I would say just knowing what warm to cool colors are is really useful because you'll find that people refer to warm and cool colors all the time. And so warm colors are essentially anything that looks warm. When we think of the color temperature uh, of warm colors, we think of fire or the sun or heat, and we always think of sort of yellow, orange, red. Those are the warm colors. And cool colors are, violet, blue, green, things that are, color when you think of ice, cool water. Those things naturally, those colors naturally seem cool. Then we do have like this kind of like sort of division between the warm and cool colors where, this color right here, is this warm or cool? This kind of yellow green, it's kind of on the edge, so it kind of can go slightly, same over here. What is this red violet? Is it red or is it cool? Or pardon me, is it warm or is it cool? And that's natural, that kind of edge. And you'll also notice, I just want to clarify in here too, that even within the hues, like for example, let's go to, see if we can find an example in here. Well, let's just talk, I'll just talk more generally then. Let's say if we take the color yellow, we we know that the hue yellow is warm. It just falls under the category of warm. But you will, notice that some yellows will look more cool and some will look more warm. So within each hue, we have a cool and a warm version, even though the color itself might like exist within, like yellow is always warm, but we have cool warms and yellow warms, if that makes sense. So if you've heard of that before, that's what that is all about. We could probably talk more about that, but I'll let it go for now. Yeah, okay, Isis. All right, so here is your traditional additive subtractive. They all look good, and then in the center you were supposed to pretend you were mixing the primaries. And what color would you get if you mixed the primaries? I think the one we can sort of all relate to is the traditional color wheel if we've ever worked with paints before, in grade school, when, or if you do some other work just with any type of paint, you'll notice when you start mixing colors together, almost like a lot of, it doesn't just have to be the primaries or the complements, but if you mix them together, you'll start getting muddy, darker colors. And the same with subtractive. So they all tend to turn dark, whereas the additive color wheels, when you get it just right, it will turn white. And most of us don't have experience working with light, but that's more of a theory. Anyhow, you just need to fill in those centers. Okay, so analogous, yes, good. So you're working here from kind of like this color, sort of red here to violet, good, yes. And here you're going from sort of an orangey color, maybe here over to the violet, that's good. So kind of we're taking just this small chunk of overlapping a few hues. And you're also working, you can work with any type of, you can work with either changes in value, which you've done here, light to dark. Looks like also maybe a little bit of saturation here. This looks more saturated than this side. We just kind of want to create some contrast, however you want to do it, with it, whether it's value or saturation or and/or. Um, and you're working from warm to cool, good. And analogous. Yeah, this looks great. And warm, for this one, from warm to cool, and this one, um, I would maybe switch this, like have your violet here and then go to cool on the other side, green over here. You know what I mean? Just reverse those. Um, Analogous. So this one here, this may be a little bit of a big jump to be analogous, like you're going from about here all the way to yellow. So I would just maybe go to here to the red. You know, that will be more of an accurate analogous. This is actually starting to become a little bit more like almost a complement. So I would just take a smaller chunk there. Warm to cool, that looks good too. Yeah, so good. Yeah. Um, so just, a few small changes here. I think then you'll be have it right on track. Delta, yes, working with color scales, it's always nice to do that. And I think a lot of people continue to work with color scales beyond color theory just because it's a great way to sort of explore color and try to figure out what kind of colors you're using in whatever design you're working with. Um, okay, so you've got your traditional, good, additive, subtractive. One of the instructions was just to make sure that your warmest color was in the 12 o'clock position. And let's see, analogous looks good, warm to cool, analogous, warm to cool, analogous, and warm to cool. These all look good, and it looks like you have done a nice job here at varying the value and or saturation so that you get a kind of a nice sort of range. Essentially what we're just trying to do is create a sense of contrast in the scale. And the reason why we're doing this is because we're going to be using these scales in the next assignment, and it will be the assignment that we're doing next will work a lot better if we've got good contrast. And you'll maybe see how that will work when we get to that assignment. So yeah, this looks good. I don't see any changes here that you need to make. Okay, Brittany, all right, let's see. Your color wheels, yes, they look great. Nice job with those. And so for your analogous here, what I might suggest is, so you've got purple all the way to green right here. I would probably like stop maybe right here. So go from purple to blue, and that will be more of an accurate analogous. Let's see, warm to cool, that looks very good. Analogous here, so we're going from here. Again, this is probably just a bit big, so maybe here, right here to blue. That would be good. You could almost kind of maybe go right to here to the blue violet and kind of cheat that a little bit. That would still appear like analogous, but maybe just not as far as this. Warm to cool, that looks good. And analogous. So this for here again is probably, you know, so I'm going to refer, for this one, I'm actually going to refer back to the traditional. If you remember back what I said earlier, that our color wheel is really more based on the traditional wheel, or our color schemes. So I would say, so I'm going to look here, and say maybe from yellow to green or greeny blue. So I would stop just a little bit, make again a little bit smaller, you know. Or you could go, let's say, from yellow to green here if you want to use this green, either way. Warm to cool, that looks really good. So yeah, I think your analogous just needs to be changed a little. The other last thing I might do here with the warm to cool, I might change your these these end colors, like maybe take this one and make it a little darker so that you see more of a change from light to dark. That just will make it work a little bit better if you happen to use that for the next assignment. You could also probably do the same thing with this one. Well, depending upon what you do. I'm going to leave that because you're going to change that. So maybe just this one. Okay, all right. So just a little more work here especially on the analogous. Ethan, all right. So your color wheels look really good. And your analogous here, that looks really good. It looks like you're going from the red to the orange. Warm to cool, that looks good. Analogous. So for this one, I might just vary the value just a little bit more for this one. Like maybe just make this a little bit lighter. You could do this side a little bit lighter, so it goes from lighter to darker. Again, just for the sake of the next assignment, it's more powerful if you get a little more contrast. So just lighten that side here. For warm to cool on this one, I would say, so this is definitely cool here on the green side. For this side here, I might make this go more kind of emphatically into the warm colors. Even though sometimes violet we can sort of say is a little bit warm and a little bit cool, but it's on that borderline. So I might just go, go right into the red so that when we look at it, we're like, oh yes, absolutely, that's a warm color. Um, Analogous here, yeah, it looks really good. Very nice. I like the really light part going to the dark part. And then warm to cool. In this one, again, the same thing. I would make sure that you're going on a warm color here. So, this is all in the warm category right through here. All right. Um, okay. Okay, Brienne. Just a reminder again, just to make sure you're using the JPEG, whether you're in Photoshop or Illustrator, when you save your file, you save as for the classroom, you can, in the drop-down menu, it will give you the option of choosing your file format. So you just want to go switch from the GIF or the GIF to the JPEG. I think what happens with the software too is it'll always go back to your previous choice. So if you switch it over to JPEG, it should be good for the rest of the class. Okay, so I think your color wheels look really good. And let's see, warm to cool. All of your, let's go with this one, warm to cool. That looks really good. For your analogous, so I just want to say sometimes you can do something technically right, which you have here. This is definitely, you're going from red to orange. So that's sort of like right in here. So that's technically absolutely an analogous in terms of the hues. But you'll notice that it kind of has a sense of feeling like a monochrome, where we're going just from the same color to a darker version of it. That just happens sometimes when you go from, when you go from light to dark. Sometimes it starts, and it's actually happening throughout here where it looks more like a monochrome. So what we can do when that happens is we can just kind of like, um, we can actually just sort of broaden so we could go, orange, we could go a little further maybe in that, kind of move over a little further in the hue. That makes sense. So let's see, we're also here, so orange. So you can kind of go over right to here, to the yellow orange, just so that when you look at it, it'll like really, it'll be really clear that it's an analogous. And that's just, again, that's just sometimes when you're working in a design or a situation, you're working with colors, sometimes you just, color is very illusionistic. It sort of, is affected by other types of factors, which we'll talk about, in future milestones in more kind of in a deeper way. But that can be just something that can easily fix it. So again, warm to cool looks really good. For this one right here, I would maybe go for warm to cool. I might go a little warmer here. So technically this is sort of on that edge where we're kind of in the warm to cool category. So if you even move up a little bit like this, then now can you see this hue looks really much more like a warm color. Like it's like, oh yeah, that's red or magenta red. So I would do that there. And then this looks great, warm to cool. That's a really nice interval there. Okay, so again, just, tweaking very small things here to just, really exemplify these concepts. Hey, Kristen, let's see. Traditional, additive, subtractive, those look great. Analogous, this looks really good. It's interesting. Sometimes, when you really tone out a color like you're doing here, it's always so fascinating to actually sort of like see what the hue is underneath, because sometimes it's a little bit, like right here, you're going all the way to the yellow here. And when you really tone out a yellow, it starts to look a little bit of that, like kind of like an olive color, which is interesting. It starts to have more of a green property to it. That looks good. So warm to cool, that looks really good. So kind of a green to a kind of blue color here, warm to cool. And then analogous, oh, that's a nice analogous. I like that kind of green, bright green color to the blue, and warm to cool. Yeah, this looks great. I don't see any changes you need to make. Hey, Robert, let's see. Your color wheels, they look great. Nice job. Analogous, that looks really good. Warm to cool, that looks good. For this one right here, I really love the kind of paleness to the darker green. I might say, oh, let's actually just switch over to Photoshop here. Uh, I would say that for this one, you want to just broaden your hue a little bit more. So you're kind of like going from green to a yellow green, maybe go all the way to yellow, start yellow to green or green to yellow, whichever you want to do. Um, and warm to cool, that looks really good. I like those choices of color. Analogous, that looks very good. And this bottom one here, warm to cool, that also looks really good. So just one scale, just one you need to tweak a little bit. Okay, Sebastian, let's see. Analogous, that looks great. Warm to cool. Analogous, warm to cool. Analogous and warm to cool. These all look excellent. And see, for your color wheels, yeah, these look good too. The only thing I would say here is maybe just take this one here and maybe saturate it a little bit more or lighten it, so it's a little bit more evident that that's an orangey yellow. Everything else looks really good. Okay, Vanessa. Okay, your wheels look really good. And let's see, analogous. Yes, you're going from the blue to the red. Yes, warm to cool, analogous, warm to cool, analogous. And for this one here, I might go just a wee bit more warm, like even up to here, one swatch over so that you get kind of into that magenta. That will be more, it still kind of has a cool quality to it. You could go all the way to the red, which is really truly warm, but even just there, it'll be more obvious that it's a warm to cool. So I might just adjust those. But that's it. And yes, I want to just say you do have some really beautiful colors here. One of the things that's so interesting, like this, just looks like sort of a designer swatch, colors, like some kind of really interesting sort of very design colors. And that's what I think we may talk about this more. Um, Certainly I'm always working on like, I love color harmonies. I use them all the time. But then even when you know the color harmonies, and what are the color harmonies supposed to do? They're supposed to give you harmony, like a natural harmony. But even when you have the harmony, you want to kind of be like kind of picky about the harmony that you choose to kind of get like those really kind of really fresh looking colors that, you could say even go beyond the harmony in the sense of sort of having a more of a sense of uh, discernment in them. And throughout this class, that's what one of the things we're really doing too, is just sort of paying attention to colors and starting to become more sensitive to them. There's this really interesting, and I wish I don't have the link, I apologize, but I remember some time ago a friend of mine who's a painter um, posted on Facebook, of course, this color theory test where you had to discern amongst like thousands of colors, like you had to kind of match colors up, you know, and he like got this like amazing score, like 99 out of 100. Like it was, a lot of tests online are pretty easy, those type of test yourself, but this was actually really hard. And so all of us artists, designers, we were all doing it, and he had the highest score. Like none of us, or some of us, I didn't, but some other people came closer. But it's because he spent like, in his case, decades working and mixing with color in his studio. So his eye can actually perceive, can kind of match colors up, even though they're very close. And so his sensitivity is just over the years has really grown. And it wasn't anything analytical he did. It was really just kind of like working on colors, really intensely. So that's something that we all are doing really when we work a lot with color, is we just get better at it. So, it's really something I think that is a wonderful thing to know, that the more you work with color, I think the better eh, your color sense becomes. And oh, I can't think, we have one more to go here. Okay, Minette. Okay, your color wheels look really good. Let's see. I'm going to actually pull this into Photoshop here. And so in this one here, yeah, orange to red, you might want to take this orange and make it, maybe even pull it up just maybe a little more saturated, or maybe go a little further along your, like you're going from red to orange, maybe go from red to orange yellow, just to make it look really that like analogous really pop, you know. Sometimes you have to go just a little bit more. Warm to cool. So it looks to me like your scales, this is starting to work well, but I would use the tutorials within the assignment list for Photoshop or Illustrator just to kind of blend them a little bit more to get those steps. I think in Illustrator it's probably the easiest one to work with to get it naturally to blend, just to make sure you have more even steps. But I think you've got the concepts here. Let's see, warm to cool. Yes, definitely warm to cool. Yes. Maybe in this one I might go a little bit warmer right here, maybe right over to here or even to here, just so that you get a little bit more, like, again, the magenta sometimes can look really cool, just to make sure it's really warm. And I think you're analogous. I think, yeah, so I definitely think you have the concepts, and I would just focus on blending these a little bit more. Um, and again, like I do think Illustrator is probably the easy. I mean, I would tend to work more with Illustrator than Photoshop for these types of exercises, so I'm not as familiar with Photoshop. Um, but I I tend to think Illustrator is a little easier, so you could maybe give that a try. I just popped back into the Photoshop tutorials, and yeah, so there is actually a very good tutorial on how to create the gradients nice and evenly so you don't have to do it yourself. So if you check part 3 of the Photoshop tutorial, it will tell you how to do that. Okay, everybody, thanks everyone for your hard work, and I'll look forward to seeing your revisions on this assignment if you need to do that in the final submission that's due on Wednesday.